Planning Committee meeting of the Contra Costa Transportation Authority. It doesn't say roll call, but everyone is here but Commissioner Abelson, just for the record. Commissioner Pierce is here as the alternate to Commissioner Haskew. Do we have anyone in the public who wishes to address us on any item that is not on the agenda this evening? There'll be opportunity to speak on items on the agenda later on. All right, seeing none, may I have a motion to approve the minutes of October 4th? Thank you. Mr. Hanson moves and Mr. Romick seconds. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. Motion carries 4-0. Okay, consent calendar. You know, Mr. Hudson, you would do that, but I'm going to ask Ms. Pierce to make that motion.
I will so move.
And you can second it, okay?
Okay.
Pierce, Hudson. Move the calendar. All opposed, all in favor say aye. Aye. No opposed. Motion carries 4-0. Regular agenda items 4.0. Mr. Engelman is going to talk to us about the authorization to transmit the urban limit line policy evaluation letter to the city of Martinez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Martin Engelman, Deputy Executive Director for Planning. And before I make my presentation on this ULL item, I would like to introduce our new planning assistant, Lillian Arvisu, and she's our most recent hire here at the authority.
Nice to have you with us.
This is her first planning committee meeting.
We'll
So we received a request from the city of Martinez to evaluate a proposed adjustment to their urban limit line. And the city received a request actually from a property owner. Property owner has a 10-acre parcel of land, and they want to get annexed into the city. In order for that to happen, the city would first have to move the ULL. And it's kind of an interesting situation. The property is zoned residential. It has one owner-occupied single-family unit on it. It's currently split by the existing ULL, and that is the southern portion is within the ULL, and the northern tip is outside. And we've included at your dais the color map indicating the location of the property. The property is already served by the Martinez Water Service Area, so it receives city water. And the basic test we have as far as our Measure J urban limit line policy is all the local jurisdictions are required to have a voter-approved urban limit line, and they can either adopt the county's line or they can have a special vote on their own line. In this case, the city of Martinez adopted the county's line, so they have what's called a county ULL. And the authority policy allows cities to amend their urban limit line provided that amendment is 30 acres or less. So that's a basic test we ask if we're asked to give a policy evaluation on a proposed decision. And in this case, the property is 10 acres, so it meets that test. And then there are a number of other requirements that the authority has adopted. The language of Measure J says that we discourage consecutive actions. So is this a consecutive action that amounts to more than 30 acres? No, it's a non-consecutive action. And we've also determined that non-consecutive means that there shouldn't be adjustments that are proximate to one another. And in combination, we don't want adjustments that would result in amassing a continuous parcel of more than 30 acres. And there's also, in correspondence back and forth with the county, we further defined our policy that we would discourage approval of amendments that would create a pocket of land outside of the ULL that would kind of tempt future decision makers to fill it in. So looking at all those tests, we look at this parcel and we think it's a pretty straightforward case. The draft letter that's in your packet, we would send this back to the city to senior planner there, Corey Simon, and the letter, which is attachment A, indicates that the proposed change to the ULL would not create an issue with growth management compliance. So tonight we're asking for your recommendation to the authority to approve transmitting attachment A, the draft letter, response to urban limit line policy evaluation letter request from the city of Martinez, basically indicating that it's okay for them to move the line. That concludes my report.
Mr. Hudson?
Yeah, Martin, to me, the bigger thing, this seemed pretty simple when I looked at it, but I want to make sure that, excuse me, when somebody else tries it, that we haven't closed the door. About 80% of this is outside the urban limit line, if I read this correct. I mean, they have a portion of this that's inside the urban limit line already. Are we sending this letter that says that you can do the full parcel? Are we sending that, what I'm getting at is, are we just saying that you can, if it's 10 acres and that small piece is 2, are we sending a letter that says you can count the whole 8? Or are we just saying that it counts? What are we actually saying to people so when the next person wants to do it, we aren't doing these separately or differently? Or
Well, the request from the city is, would it be okay for them to move the line to include this 10-acre parcel in its entirety?
okay, so you're talking about it.
So it's simply this, it's about an 8-acre amendment, and the intent of the letter is that it only applies to this parcel. They would move the line to include this parcel.
Okay. Well, then let me ask the other question while other people are listening. If after somebody sees this, the blue lines there, whatever, somebody else wants to move it, are we back to the contiguous, or does that 30-acre total pop in? Or I know I'm not making this clear. They're asking to do 8, they can do 30. If the people that are right next to this property, which is usually the case, want to do something 5, 10 years from now, or 5 or 10 months, where do they stand? They can't do it because it's contiguous, or you've got up to 30 acres before we start getting crazy at the board of directors here?
So the requests, Commissioner, the requests will be taken on a case-by-case basis.
Okay.
We did actually get a request from the city of Martinez perhaps a couple of years ago regarding a property that's east of this property in that large pocket to the right. And that was a much more complicated request, created 2 islands, and we were much more cautious about that one. I don't think there are any other property owners in the immediate vicinity that would want to piggyback on this.
Okay.
So I think it's just a single case, and if another one comes up, we would address it on a case-by-case basis. If we saw consecutive, contiguous actions, we would discourage that.
Okay.
Julie?
Yeah, in looking at this map, it's a little difficult, and I tried to Google it, and I didn't really get a better answer. The access to this parcel is where? Off of Stonehurst Drive down toward the bottom of that parcel? Where is the road access to this? I mean, obviously, they've got a single house on it now, so they get there somehow. Is that just above the arrow?
The access is, they entered on the southern end.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it doesn't appear that the parcel that Dave was just talking about that is directly above it on this diagram, that is inside the sphere but outside the urban limit line and north of this property, has access either at all.
I don't believe that. I think that's unoccupied. That's a rural.
Okay, but it must have access from somewhere.
It might not.
Oh,
Some
so
of
are
these
we
parts-
creating an island?
No.
No.
Okay, okay. I mean, it's outside the city limits, that's,
Yeah, the city would move the urban limit line to include this
the pink,
full
all of the
parcel.
pink parcel.
And then they could take action through LAFCO to annex
Right.
that parcel and actually move their city limit. And that decision goes to LAFCO. But the urban limit line decision goes to you as far as whether or not it would introduce a
No,
growth
I
management.
understand that. I was just sort of following up on Dave's question about, do we create an island of that hashed parcel just north of this one that could become problematic later, but it doesn't even appear that it's got access except for perhaps through this parcel. So I think it makes total sense.
Commissioner Pierce, I will say, Christina Radcliffe from the city of Martinez is here. She's the planning director.
Oh, okay.
And maybe she could, do you want to come up and clarify?
Well, and while she's doing that, I'd like to, okay, so we're talking about the pink land.
Right.
And we're talking about what I call the blade. The blade is, has this always been owned by the people, or they're just now? Okay, so the new city limit, if they get annexed, would be at the north end. And then whatever is pink now would become yellow, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so, and I'm sorry, while you're standing there, why are these two, I don't get this little, the hash mark, the black hash mark where it's white on the left of the city limits is because the urban limit line isn't there, so maybe you can address that issue too. Do you know what I'm talking about? It's these two little parcels right here that are white. They're not in the city, and they're not part of inside the urban limit.
So the map I'm looking at is a little different than yours.
Okay.
In the packet.
It's okay, go
Is this what I
ahead.
had?
Go answer Julie's
They're
question.
actually the same
basically-
one.
Basically, what you have right now is kind of, oh, thanks. Oh, it is the same one.
I think it's the same one.
Okay. So those are actually, I'm sorry, those two parcels that you're referring to are actually hashed. It just maybe didn't come through on your,
Are they inside the city limits?
no.
So they're,
I'm sorry. Oh, these two here? It's inside the urban limit line, and it is, yes. It's part
So-
of Stonehurst, I think.
so it should be yellow.
I think so.
Okay, cool.
We can talk later. The parcel in question, the 10 acres, I'm not sure, we're not sure, we went through the records, why that, this like finger going down happened that way. It doesn't
Right.
seem to make any sense. It would make more sense to just go across. So actually, we're kind of lessening that oddity of a finger right now. There is a single residence on the property. It's 10 acres. Part of the property is very steep. It's kind of a deep ravine. As a 5-acre parcel under our zoning, what it would be, it wouldn't be able to develop or add another unit other than perhaps an accessory dwelling unit. Excuse me, the parcel just above that is separate, but it's owned by Stonehurst. It's owned by the HOA of Stonehurst.
So
here.
it's open space?
Yeah, there's nothing happening with that.
Because you're going to move, if all goes as planned, you're going to move the urban limit line up to sort of square off. You're not going to leave that little itty bitty thing there. Well, maybe you're, okay. So you'll leave that there, but then that will become the new urban,
Correct.
you're moving it out. Okay.
Right. So it's not a perfect solution, to make a nice, even urban limit line, but it helps to make more sense. The finger down here really doesn't make it much sense.
No, it doesn't.
So it conforms to the property line
It does
for
conform-
this particular
yes.
parcel.
This would conform to the
Yeah,
property line
splitting
of this
properties
particular
is
parcel.
bad policy.
I know this isn't in our purview, but I'm assuming the reason the owners are doing this is they may want to subdivide this land in the future?
No, they don't.
They just wanna
said
have
they
it-
don't want to subdivide the land. They want to have it within the city. There has been in the past some confusion with sheriff's department and.
Yeah, we
police.
know all about that.
That's right.
Okie dokie.
That, so.
Any further questions? Let's have a motion, Mr. Romick.
Move approval.
And Mr. Romick moves, Ms. Pierce seconds. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. Motion carries. I assume you're the property owners? Hello? You're Mr. You're the Donovans. My contacts aren't working too well. Hello, Mr. and Mrs. Donovan. What I want to do is, will this be on the consent calendar for our December 20th meeting?
Yes.
So you're welcome to attend, but it'll be on consent. You really don't have to if you don't want to. But anyway.
I'm sure it will not be consent.
No, I'm sure it will be just fine, and it's nice to see you. All righty. Moving on to item 5.0, which is Mr. Kelly going to tell us about the approval, ask for us to approve to distribute the final Measure J calendar year 2016 and 2017 Growth Management Program compliance list checklist for allocation of fiscal year 2017 and 18 and 18 and 19 local street maintenance and improvement funds. After I've said that, there's nothing left to say about what this is. That's a joke. Go ahead.
That was my entire presentation.
Thank you. Any further discussion? We don't even have any, well, we do have Mr. Cunningham, and I'm sorry, I never remember your name, but I know you're a staff person. But you're not public. That's where I was going. You're just folks. You're part of us. No, I asked. Did anybody want to say anything? No. They want to leave too. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? No. Motion carries. Good. Yeah. Anytime. So, Mr. Beck, if I read yours, is that the report too? Number 6 is the status of priority development areas planning grants. Probably need a little bit more on that one, yes.
Okay, I'll try not to be too long and hit the summary. As a follow-up to OBAG 1, we got about $2.8 million in federal funds to do PDA planning grants. In response, we approved 10 grants, 4 contracts with consultants to provide those services. Projects are located throughout the county, from Lafayette's downtown congestion study, El Cerrito, San Pablo Avenue, PDA implementation study, Oakley's downtown PDA market study, the smallest one at about $100,000, looked at the feasibility of developing either a train station or a park and ride lot in their downtown and the effect that it would have on housing and economic development there. Walnut Creek's downtown specific, north downtown specific plan is the largest project, about $700,000. It will develop a specific plan for that part of their downtown and will include a full EIR, which is part of the reason why it's the most expensive. A full EIR, environmental impact report. Some of the projects, like Walnut Creek and Lafayette projects, involved extensive public outreach. Some of them were more implementation steps for previous plans, like Concord's downtown corridor plans and Martinez's PDA market and fiscal analysis. At the end of November, 6 of the 10 were complete. We expect the Lafayette one to be approved by the council in January. The El Cerrito and county projects, depending on when they go to their respective boards, should be done by the end of March. The Walnut Creek one will take the longest time, but we still expect it to be done in June and go to their council for full approval of the specific plan. So if you have any questions, let me know. I'll try to answer them.
Are all of these now fully funded, or do they still have gaps that they'll have to fill?
The plans are all fully funded.
Okay.
These are all planning studies, and they were all funded with a mix of federal funds with local staff time and authority staff time providing the match. The City of Walnut Creek did kick in some of their own funding to do some additional analysis of intersections within the north downtown
Does this give
area.
them that money back into their budget for other planning, or is this in addition to what they've already kicked in?
The majority of the funding for the study came from the federal funds
Right.
and from staff time as the match.
Okay.
It's a fairly minor part, it's like $60,000 extra.
Okay.
So I think Ms. Pierce wants to move the item,
Sure.
and Mr. Hudson will want to second it.
Absolutely.
Any further discussion? No public. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. No opposed. Motion carries 4-0. Moving on to item 7.0, which is the adoption of the proposed 2017 Congestion Management Plan update for Contra Costa, and that, again, is Mr. Kelly. Get to talk a little bit more this time.
Thank you, Chair Mitchoff. Once again, I'll try and keep this brief, as we do see this every 2 years, and this will be going to the full authority on discussion. As the CMA for Contra Costa, we are required legislatively to update our congestion management program at least every other year. The 2017 update will be our 13th. As you may know, and as I remind people, every 2 years, the original CMP legislation was based on our original growth management program from Measure C. So because of that, we defer to the growth management program for many of the requirements of the CMP. However, we do use the CMP to monitor our transportation system, the entire county. We also use it to update our capital improvement program, list of all of our projects, and to document our current activities, policies, and major milestones. So on the CIP, it's now valued at over $16 billion. It includes projects that updates to it include projects we've received through the countywide transportation plan update, the transportation expenditure plan from last year, the OBAG 2 process, and the recent regional measure 3. So we added the Richmond San Rafael Bridge toll plaza improvements that came through the RM3 process, and a new project like the Brentwood Intermodal Transit Facility at the McKellamne Overcrossing. Another focus was to update our current performance measures, including those from the CTP, those from Plan Bay Area 2040, the metrics used by each of our transit providers in the county, and the MTSOs from our recently adopted action plans. As I mentioned, we monitor the transportation system around the county. That includes all of the freeways, also includes 65 intersections around the county, and they're monitored for their level of service. One issue that we address in the CMP is that the passage of Senate Bill 743, which removes level of service from CEQA. We expect that the state will now kind of chase its own tail and update the CMP legislation, which could change the way we monitor. However, we still can monitor for level of service, but we may have to report other metrics like VMT or things like that. But we'll leave that to Sacramento to update the CMP legislation. We may see that in 2019 or 2021. Let's see. Also, we document our model development. We submit a report to MTC demonstrating our consistency with their model. We do that under separate cover. The draft CMP was released in July for review and comment. All comments have been incorporated into the version in the agenda. And we did submit a version of the CMP to MTC staff last month for their review because they normally release CMP guidelines in about the summertime. They didn't this year because of some staff turnovers and so forth. So we submitted it so that they could comment on the CMP and give us any recommended changes they have as part of their guidelines. We don't expect anything major to come out of those comments, but we will incorporate any recommended changes from MTC staff. Staff's recommendation is to forward the 2017 CMP to the authority for adoption in December. That would be done under public hearing, which has been noticed or will be noticed in the paper this week, I believe. And that's my presentation.
Thank you. Any questions? It's Mr. Hudson's turn. You're going to move it?
Yep.
Okay, you have that. Motion by Hudson, second by Pierce. Anybody wish to discuss anything? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. No opposed. Motion carries. Mr. Engel, you've been sitting here very nicely, and we haven't gotten to hear from you. Not that you should, but I wanted to mention that we've gone back and forth, and I see Peter sitting there, and he didn't have to say anything.
No, it goes off at 20.
I had an item on consent, but it didn't get pulled.
Oh, okay. See, we heard his voice. And then Mr. Hale's there in the back. There we go. Everybody's been accounted for. We don't have any other business, news.
Yes, we do.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Yes, Mr. Engelmann, you even mentioned it to me. Go ahead, please.
Other business. So just so you know, the state has released a draft rail plan, and they released it in October. Comments are due by December 11th, and we received a letter from the City of Hercules asking us to comment on the plan. We are going to send, I'm going to transmit a letter to them, to the staff over at Caltrans, commenting on the plan. Basically, our comments are that on the Capitol Corridor, this state rail plan fails to mention the future Hercules station along the Capitol Corridor, and it also fails to mention a possible future Oakley station on the San Joaquin JPA line. So that's basically going to be our comment letter, and comments are due on the 11th. I did talk with the Caltrans Rail Branch Chief, Andy Cook, today, and so we'll draft the letter, we'll transmit the letter. It will be in your packet on the 20th, and you can ratify it at that point. If you have any amendments, Caltrans is willing to accept those at that time.
We're giving staff direction, Dave. That's an inside joke. We were at a meeting today, and it took over a half hour to talk about staff direction. So
Something that wasn't on the agenda.
on something that wasn't on the agenda. So Mr. Engelmann is informing us, and so we're going to direct him to send that letter off to the state.
Because it's all consistent with previously established policies.
There you go. We've covered all the bases. With that, we're not meeting as a committee till January 3rd, but we'll all be back here on December 20th and look forward to that. Thank you to staff. We always love seeing the decorations here, and I really do like this little guy here. Anyway, any other comments by board members?
This is the longest you've gone. You're
Well,
really wound up tonight.
we have 7 items on the agenda.
We could have
Okay.
been on the road. Only
The
7.
meeting is adjourned.